I think we're live everywhere, hopefully. So, okay, let's wait for this few seconds. Yes, we are in. I believe so. Perfect. All right. Here comes my phone. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Monday Talkers audience everywhere, lovely audience. Hello again, and welcome back to Monday Talks Live. We are live today on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Monday Talks YouTube channel. My name is Daniel Tokal. I am the founder of NDS, which is the N Design Studio. As a self proclaimed LinkedIn alchemist, I've spent years transforming ordinary brands into extraordinarily thought leaders. My journey wasn't all about uh, telling stories and compelling narratives. I spent 2 decades honing my engineering skills, but it was the spark of entrepreneurship that ignited my true passion. NDS became my second daughter, nurtured with every challenge, fueled with a pure passion. But success wasn't all about numbers. It's about crafting stories resonated. That's why I launched Monday Talks, and recently I moved this into live shows. Today I'm not just an entrepreneur, I'm a storyteller. My mission is to help you rewrite your own story, whether you are an engineer, business owner, simply someone looking to make a difference. I believe that storytelling is the key to unlocking your own potential. If you are ready to start in your own story, connect with me and let's explore how your unique narrative can take center stage. You too could be my next guest on Monday Talks. Today it's very exciting title we decided to go through. So welcome back again. We have a special guest, Sahil Mehta. How are you, Sahil?
Doing wonderful, Danielle. Such a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So today we're diving deep into the psychology of people pleasing with Sahil Mehta. In this episode, Sahil will share his insights on the dangers of prioritizing others' needs over your own well being. We'll explore the underlying reasons why people engage into people pleasing behavior and how to break free from this pattern if it's good or if it's bad. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and to rediscover the true self and live more authentic life you look for. Okay, let's start with the first very question that everybody I start with. I love to say, like, who is Sal?
That's a great question. I asked myself the same question and I talk about it in my book. And I realized the response that people want to hear, Danielle, is I'm an author, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a coach, and a passionate mountaineer. However, in the book titled Break Free, I asked that question, who am I? And I realized that a lot of these are just labels.
Mhm.
These are labels that have been put on me. I didn't choose my name. This was chosen by my parents. Based on the country I was born or the nationality of my parents, my nationality was given. I was told you should follow this religion. And other people have put labels, some good, some not so good. And I think I have maybe 50, 100 labels right now from all sorts of people. But the introduction I like to give, which is the one I already shared, is the coach, entrepreneur, author, and passionate mountaineer. That's what I guess most people want to hear.
Amazing, because sometimes I ask my guests to present themselves and tell about themselves without titles. Because sometimes even social media, we get like likes and engaging because yeah, we are the CEO or we are the general manager. So what about me as the person? So thank you very much for introducing yourself, the human part of Sahel. Let's dig deep. And before that, hi Prita, hi Zuben. Thank you for encouraging us and be available with us in this session. let's dig deep and start with the session today. So, people pleasing, is it good? Is it bad? So, is it harmful? What does it mean first? And how does it affect our mental and emotional health? That's a big question, right?
So let's first talk about what people pleasing is, just so there's no confusion. People
Mhm.
pleasing is the attempt to make the other person happy. I say
Nice.
attempt because it may work, it may not work, but it's the attempt to make the other person happy. That is my
Hmm.
definition of people pleasing.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, why
So,
that's done, it could be all sorts of reasons. And I also want to say, because you asked me, is it good or bad? I want to start by saying there's a lot of good to it. There's nothing wrong in making another person happy. If you tell me, Sahil, let's go watch a movie, and I go, Danielle, which movie would you like to see? Oh, I really want to watch that new blockbuster. I say, okay, let's go. If it doesn't really make a difference in my life and I know it makes you happy, why not? Rather than choosing another film, which again makes no difference in my life, but I know would make you unhappy. So that's a good thing to do. It's a nice thing to make someone else happy. Now
yes.
let's flip to the flip side, right? The other side. Because there's always two
Mm.
sides to the coin or multiple perspectives, as they say. What if I've already seen the movie? Or what if I know that that's a genre I really hate, but I'm doing it just to please you, but I know it's causing pain to me? Now that's not good.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the reason for me, like, to go with your wish and attend the movie? Sometimes it's like a balance. How close are you to me? Like, if my wife is asking for this or someone very close, sometimes I just like balance it. Okay, I will watch the movie again. What else can I do? you know. But what other reasons can drive me to please other people?
The reasons can be so many, Danielle. Some typical examples are I want to avoid confrontation.
Hmm.
That's the story in my mind. It may not be reality, but that's the story in my mind. Perhaps it's something to do with my childhood where I saw arguments between family members or otherwise. And I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to be the reason for an argument. It could
Hmm.
be I'm trying to suck up to you because I need something from you, or you might be opening doors for me, right? These are just some of the most common reasons, but there could be so many more. But the reality is, and again, I want to emphasize this point, if the decision to make you happy is causing pain to me, that's considered, from my perspective, bad.
Hmm.
Because that pain can grow over time. That pain can cause a lot of discomfort within. Now, we use the movie as an example. It's a very simple example. But there's some big decisions where people are saying yes to when they really want to say no. And that hurts them. They're thinking about it. They're not able to sleep properly, perhaps. Or maybe they're doing it so often that it's little cuts, and it's like they say, death by a thousand paper cuts. It's just happening again and again and again and again. But at some point, when you keep doing that, you're not being true to yourself. You're not being you
Hmm.
because that's not the answer you really wanted to give. And so when it
When
comes
it
to
is when it is considered selfishness not to please people.
selfish is it has a negative connotation. A lot of people say selfish in general, I'm saying, is not a good thing. I just want to share a different perspective once again on selfishness. If I'm being true to myself and I do things that truly make me happy, I'm going to be a better version of myself with you. When I'm a better version of myself and an authentic version of myself with you, you're one, getting the real me, and two, you're getting the authentic me. So that means our relationship is based on truth and authenticity. Now, if I'm doing something that is only focusing on you, that gives me pain, I'm not giving love to myself. I'm not being me, I'm being someone else in front of you. And so, how truthful or authentic is that relationship?
Hmm.
And then, am I always wearing that mask every time I'm with you? Then, what kind of relationship are we building, which is not based on authenticity and truthfulness?
True me,
Now, again, I
right?
do want to stress at this point, if it makes no difference to me and it'll make you happy, or I don't really care, then of course do it. I'm really talking about the points in your life where you're saying yes when you really, really wanted to say no.
Hmm. Okay, let's go to real life. I mean, okay, it's not always about my wife, but it's always my kids also, right? Sometimes we say no because simply we're not in the mood. Sometimes it happens. Like if a kid wants to go to the playground and I'm really stressed about work or thinking about something or planning to have something. Okay, I'm not working, but my mind is not clear for this action. I might say no. So the mood here has a big part of putting my decision, but will it be considered like selfishness or I love to please my son or my daughter? When is the right time to yes or when is the right time of or no?
I love what it's a great question. Now let's just look at break it down. Let's say you said no when your child was hoping that you would say yes. Now, if you haven't switched out of that mode that you're in, you're physically present, but mentally or emotionally you may not be present, and that might just create or make the situation worse. You said yes, you go there, you're like, oh, I'm just going because I feel I have to, and then you don't have the right attitude, the right spirit, and then it's not such a great time because the kid is hoping to play a sport with you or eat with you or whatever it is, and you're just not being present,
True.
right? So you have to ask yourself, is that serving the child or you? And just because you said yes because you thought you're pleasing them, you might have actually caused more damage because they may get upset that, you know what, my dad's not even listening, he's on his phone, I'm talking but it seems like he's lost somewhere, whatever it might be. Now let's look at the flip side, because I'm not a there's ways you don't have to always say no. You can always say yes, and can we please do it an hour later, for example, and then you say, you know what, I just need to get out of this mode, or I'm going to wrap this up, and then I'll be fresh, I'll be in the zone, I'll be focused to be and present with my family. That's one way
Hmm.
of looking at it. So you're saying yes
Nice.
and instead of no, it's yes and, just putting a small condition to it, which is serving you and then ultimately serving them as well and the relationship. And the second option is, depending on how aware or experienced you are in this space, you can say, I'm not going to get this work done now anyway. You know what? This is an opportunity for them to pull me out of this hole that I'm in. And I'm going to
Hmm.
take that opportunity and spend time with them and just focus on being present with the children. So again, these are hypothetical situations, but I'm giving different examples because when you ask a question, there can be so many outcomes to it depending on your mindset. But again, I want to stress on that point that I said earlier. If you're going to go and you're not going to be present, you might be doing more damage than good. So they might get the
Hmm.
initial pleasure, but then there's longer term pain.
Disappear.
And the relationship.
Okay, let's dig deep because children is the most challenging thing, and dealing with them will be really challenging. Sometimes there's a argument between the husband and wife. You are the no, and you are always the no. So don't make me like I'm the only yes, or just like you're the police and I'm just a Mister Yes. You know. So yeah, there's a kind of agreement And sometimes it's blow up because the kid tried to approach the father and he said, "Baba, and I need this," and he says no, and then yeah, it's a change of approach, and he goes to his mom and he says, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to your dad," and see, she's now Miss Yes, right? So this is also apply of like way of raising children of accepting the no from both ends, or just like stop playing this game, manipulating us and taking us separately to get the your yes every time.
Well, look, I mean, children or not children, I believe that a lot of people don't like hearing the word no when they request something,
Yeah,
right? And that's why whenever I get asked a question, I first reflect and I go, is there a way to say yes, but with a condition? So it's yes and, right?
I love it.
Because you might say it might not be now, it might be later, it might be later in the week. It could maybe you say, I mean, based on the scenario, but is there a way to say yes and? So that's one thing that I would say off the bat. And it's not trying to please them. It's just if I tell you no on something, I almost feel that the person has a greater desire to want to do it. Yeah, for example, I don't want to own a firearm, but if someone tells me no, you can't own one, I'll probably go out and buy one. Because I'm like, you can't tell me no. I'm gonna go get one now. So it's just the human psychology, right? So
True,
that's one
true, yeah.
component of it. And the second component is really the alignment between the spouses.
Hmm. Yeah,
There has to
true.
be an agreement. Either you have to mix and match on the good cop bad cop, where sometimes you're the good cop and the bad, but if one person is always the good and one's always the bad, that doesn't really help the relationship with the children. It's like favoritism. um, and so one strategy that I've seen parents use is when the child goes to them, they'll ask, have you spoken to your father or to your mother, depending on who they came to first? And so that's the alignment between the spouses that ask that question first, because that way you know if you're the first one to respond or if you're the second one to respond. And if you're the first one to respond, you can say, well, let's discuss it with the other, or you can decide how to respond. And if you're the second one to respond, you can always ask, what did they say?
True, true. Yes, we use this technique, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this
there
is
are
the
many ways
this is the
around it.
example.
It really comes down to communication. We use kids as an example, but this happens in the workforce. This happens between
Yeah,
friends.
this is what
When
I'm going to just like transfer this into the practical work or like office world. We see there is a every one of us has some degree, just like you said before we go live, to some extent that we need to please our managers and laugh and share all that stuff. But some other just exceed those limits and go just like, oh, bring me coffee and yeah, here's a biscuit and how are you, boss? And every time, just like 1 hour past, just like, hi, how are you, boss? And just, oh my god, what's happening here? Should I be afraid on my place that this guy is going to be my manager soon? you know. So, what drives these guys to believe that this is the right way to be promoted? Is it?
it's definitely not the right way to be promoted. I mean, ultimately, many companies that I work with when I'm coaching them, they have policies in place where they look at many different areas in order to promote their team members. They have 360 reviews. They've got programs that they have for management or leadership, and based on the results, their personality tests. I mean, there's so many things they look at. They make decisions. Now, if you feel, because traditionally, and maybe in smaller businesses, what happens is you tend to promote people you like. And so if someone seems to be, and I don't mean to be rude to anyone, but let's just call it a suck up for this conversation. where they're
It
just
is.
saying
This is
yes
the
to
right
everything.
expression.
The question is, once you do get promoted, how are you going to be? And if they realize that that's not the person that you were and you were being inauthentic, and they see how you are as a leader when you get into a new position, again, it might have helped in the short term, but what does that mean in the long term? What if they realize that you weren't being authentic? How is that going to then affect your career within the organization?
It's sometimes like it's working. This is the right way of climbing the ladder in some companies because maybe the environment is not healthy. Maybe the manager opened his ears, just like, yeah, this guy is giving me news, and I know what's happening in the team. This guy, uh, I'm thinking of to have my place because I'm getting promoted. It works. This is reality sometimes, but what what would love to know is how that affect the relationship between this pleasing guy and his colleagues and sometimes his manager. If the manager does not love this kind of attitude and this guy is keep pushing.
Well, the two red flags, one I already mentioned, which is once you get promoted and they realize that you're not that person because your behavior changes, then the senior management in the company may question, did we make a mistake by promoting this individual, and what should we do about it? The second is, if you're being the suck up and all your colleagues around you see that, and then you eventually get promoted and become their boss, how much respect are they going to have for you? So again, I'm just trying to open the horizon on perspective that people pleasing in all forms, whether it's in the company, whether it's with family, whether it's with friends, it may look like it's doing justice. It may look like it's giving you an advantage in the short term, but you have to ask yourself, one, is it sustainable? Because
Mm,
again, you're wearing a mask and you're not being true and authentic. And two, how can it potentially affect the relationship in the long term?
mm,
And in all those scenarios, the long term effect by being inauthentic and by people pleasing and causing pain or inauthenticity to yourself, you have the risk that you're not going to be
mm,
happy with your decisions, because ultimately you have to sleep with yourself every night, and you may not fall asleep with peace.
mm.
I'm going to give you an example in the workspace the other way around as well, by the way, when you're senior and you're people pleasing to juniors. Okay, I was recently the chair of a board of directors in an organization. It was a 1 year term, and I had a couple of my board members who I would say crossed the line. They crossed the line, and this was now towards the end of the fiscal year. And I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking to myself, what should I do? Should I just let it go because I'll ruffle feathers. It'll be confrontation, which is not pleasant, but I don't have a problem with it, but it's not pleasant. It's just 3 months left with my term. Let's. And then I was just speaking to some of the other board members, and like, yeah, forget it. Maybe they also didn't want to have confrontation or whatever. What happened in the end? They put a governance claim on me because they had a personal vendetta against me.
Mm,
Okay, now I don't want to go into the details, but essentially, because I didn't act, like I was actually going to remove one of them from the board, and then I chose not to do it. In the end, and that it's because of people pleasing. Let's just be honest. Because of that,
mm,
he filed a governance claim against me. I was removed from the board while the investigation went on. During the investigation, they found absolutely nothing because it was bogus claims, and I was reinstated back into the board. But I lost almost 2 months, and I got back on the board literally days before I was finishing my term. Now, had I taken action earlier, which is what I should
mm,
have done, that was the right thing to do, not because I was upset at someone and I was trying to hurt them, but it was not in line with the integrity levels that are required on a board. Had I taken those steps, we would have got rid of this person who ultimately caused a lot of pain for many of the other members as well, and myself. But instead, I'm the one who suffered
Yeah.
tremendously.
It's very,
And
very interesting
real life
to
example that I wanted to share with you, that it's not always about just someone senior to you, it can also be
yeah.
people who are junior to you.
It's interesting. Let's dig deep here. It's amazing. Like sometime when you're a senior position and you have people not performing in your team, at some point, like you're thinking to just like let go, but because you are a people pleaser and you feel pity for him or for his family, you just like keep this decision on hold. But there's a big harm here, right? What will be the right action to take here? When is the people pleasing should like be more powerful, or should I go with a benefit of the business and just like be very firm and just like, I'm sorry, I know your situation, but so let's go.
So again, many people will have different perspectives on this. The one that I'd like to share is I always believe that everyone deserves a second chance.
Mm,
That's
mhm.
just a belief system of mine. Unless if they've done something that is so wrong and unethical, then they just have to go immediately. So let's just remove that, right? I mean, if someone is stealing from the company, for example, out.
Mm,
I mean, that's crossing. That's a line. Someone explained this to me well. There's two borders. One is a brick wall. It's a solid line, right? When you cross that, you're out.
mm,
If you have a punch out during work with somebody, you cross the line. You're out. There's no
yeah.
discussion. And then there's another wall which we refer to as a rubber wall. It's a little flexible.
Mm, mm.
Now, if you've
Love that.
crossed that, if you've hit that wall and it's just like, moving in and out, you can say, okay, this is not what we consider um, a fire immediately, right? Have a discussion. What can be done? What was learned? Are they apologetic or not? Whatever it is. And if they're true, if they're being authentic, and if they're saying that and vulnerable, and they're sorry, etc., and they're looking and they say that we will change, okay, let's put those measures in place. By when? What will you do? Because if you just say, okay, they'll change, what does that mean? Is it in 1 year? Is it in 2 weeks? Is it in 3 years? What is it? So
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
we set the
True.
parameters and then we check in that have those things happened. Because if they've
Mm,
shown that they're looking to progress, which is in line with the company's values and the progression of the for their role, by all means, that's great. Stay on board. If they've done nothing, you gave them the chance. You don't get a second chance after that. You've already got that. So
mm.
after that, thank you for your service, um, but you're no longer welcome in the company.
I love when you express the hard wall and the rubber wall. So, what are some, let's say, effective strategies for setting and upholding these boundaries?
A lot of people say, and I mean, I'm just going to jump back to the kids because a lot of parents will relate to this. If you don't do this, I will do that, right?
Yeah.
And then they don't do it, and then you don't do anything either. So then it's no longer a boundary because you didn't
No,
go
you're
through
not.
with what you said. So I always tell people, really pick your words wisely. Be careful how you define your boundaries, whether it's in the workplace or in the house, but it needs to be crystal clear. And then there are no exceptions. The moment you start
Mm,
making exceptions, it was not a boundary, or I'm talking about the brick wall now. It wasn't a boundary to begin with. It was just an empty threat. It's like firing blanks with a gun. It doesn't do anything. It just makes a lot of noise. That's it.
On the other side, just like senior people see it as this is my boundaries and I have to fire someone so the others feels my seriousness. How good is that? I mean, is it successful strategy or is it like very strict? Just like you have to fire someone?
Well, again, it depends on what they did. If something was very unethical, like I said, theft, for example, if you don't fire that person, you're setting an example
That
in a
it's
way
okay
that
to
it's
steal?
okay to steal. So it doesn't matter who it is. It could be your best performing person, but you cross the line, you cross the line. And sometimes those decisions are hard
Okay,
because,
so
but the people pleasing can kick in. It's like, oh, but we're friends and, we have dinner together and my wife knows his wife or my husband knows
yeah,
his wife.
exactly.
Whatever way it is.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking
There's
about.
there's lots of, cross pollination in relationships. But what you don't realize, and I'm going to give you an example because this happened to a friend of mine. He had someone in his company who was a non-performer, and everyone kept wondering if this person is a non-performer, why is are they still an employee in the company? And so
Interesting.
I asked him. I asked my friend. I said, "Listen, I'm hearing this from your employees. They may not tell you, but they've told me about this. So I can't tell you who, but what's going on?" I said, "Yeah, but he's such a nice guy, and he's going through a rough patch." I'm like, "Look, if you want to do charity work, whatever you're paying him as salary, fire him and give it to him personally yourself. But by doing it
So,
through the company, the example you're setting is that poor performance is accepted, and it's okay to have people like this. And then, especially when you don't reward the other ones who are doing much better, they feel it's not fair. So again, you have to not look at it just from your lens. That's the challenge that we have, Danielle, is that we're always looking through our lens. You have to look at things from multiple perspectives and say, if I see it from this angle, what does it look like? If I see it from this angle, what does it look like? If I see it from this angle, what does it look like? I mean, look, here's a Rubik's Cube. Depending on how you look at it, it's a different color. Now, you might
true.
say, when you look at this, it's a blue cube, and then I'll be like, no, it's not. Oh, it's a red cube. No, it's not. Oh, it's a green cube. So, but the point is, it has multiple perspectives depending on which angle you look at it from. And when you look at
Hmm.
it just from the one of people pleasing, you may not have thought of what the repercussions are.
Okay, let's go back to self-esteem. Where is your, I mean, how do you place people pleasing against your own well-being? How do we shift the focus from pleasing others to prioritizing our own well-being?
It's a great question, Danielle. The most important thing is to understand what causes pain and what causes pleasure to me, and what makes no difference to me. There's three categories: causes pleasure, causes pain, and then makes no difference. But if I'm in the space of people pleasing where I'm getting pain every time because I'm not saying what I really want to say and it's hurting me from inside, what is happening is there are emotions, and emotions are energy in motion. But what I've done is, and as you know, energy cannot be created or destroyed, it's simply transferred. This is what we've all learned in science class. But what is happening here is we're not allowing the energy to transfer. It's blocked inside of us and just churning. And what happens is it becomes stagnant.
Mhm.
And when it becomes stagnant, what happens when water is stagnant?
Dead.
Yeah, all life inside starts to die. So it starts to cause pain within. Now, again, I'm just going to share a personal story because in my case, I can talk about me. I'm not talking theoretically. I was so focused on people pleasing, Danielle,
Oh,
to the
you
extent
learned
where
actually.
I did it so much, it was not a mask. It was a permanent fixture on my face. It was so permanent that I thought it was me because
Hmm.
I'd been doing it so often with so many people. But in reality, it wasn't always what I wanted to do. Yes, many times I was happy with the decision, but there were many times where I was not happy with the decision. And I started to have voices in my head, like, why didn't you say this when you wanted to say it? And, all these things are going on, and I'm tormenting myself. And as a result of uh, my mind being off balance, it affected my gut. With my gut being imbalanced, I started getting a lot of inflammation and bloating as a result. That meant that in my case, again, I'm just talking about my case, whatever I was eating, my body was not absorbing all the nutrients and the vitamins in the food that I was consuming. So I started having deficiencies. Those deficiencies led to me being lethargic. Like I would have energy dips in the day. I would
Oh,
fall asleep in my, sometimes like I'd be like, almost falling asleep on my desk. And I've fallen asleep in all sorts of places, Danielle. And one time I fell asleep behind the wheel.
oh, oh.
Okay. I fell
Interesting.
asleep behind the wheel with my newlywed wife. I wake up because the car is like rumbling and shaking, and then within seconds it comes to an abrupt stop.
Oh,
Now every airbag came out except mine. I won't mention
oh,
the car manufacturer, but every airbag came out except mine. Luckily for me, I was wearing a seatbelt, and that saved me. That saved my life. But as I stepped out of the vehicle, luckily both of us, no blood, no injuries, like minor bruising only. I saw the damage. Luckily, we didn't hit any other vehicle. We went off road into rocks and trees, but the car was crushed from the back, from the front, from the side. One tire flew off.
wow,
If you saw that car, you would have thought either they're dead or they're seriously injured, and I hope that they're alive. And we
wow.
walked out with minor bruising
It's dangerous, man. It's really dangerous.
because
And it translates
your body
into yeah.
your body works in a rhythm, and when you have this emotion that's stuck, it causes your body to move out of rhythm. And that's what happened to me. I even used to wake up with a blocked nose, with a heavy head. And I kept thinking it's just me. And it wasn't a big problem where I had to go see a doctor, but it was small enough that it was causing pain on a regular basis. But I did nothing about it. I just said, think positive, be positive. This is just you. Accept yourself for who you are. But what I didn't realize is when something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, and it needs attention. But I was ignoring it. I didn't want to face reality.
Wow. So there is a fear because it goes into serious physical things in your life. You almost lost your own life and your wife also because you're in this struggle. You thought yourself, this is who I am, but actually you're not. You just like, yeah, you have this in your face and you couldn't get rid of it. So, what role, like, does fear play in people pleasing behavior, and how can you can overcome that?
Look, it plays a big role. I mean, there's multiple fears, but the fear that was in with me was the fear of confrontation. Like I didn't want to get into an argument with somebody. I thought that if I do this, I will get into an argument with someone.
Hmm.
And when it's a close person, if it's someone random, it doesn't bother me that much. But if it's a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a very, very, very close friend who you would call a brother or a sister, that's where many times this mask was just always on. And
Hmm.
I thought if I please them, they'll be happy with me. But I was causing harm to myself and I wasn't being the authentic me. So they were building a relationship with someone that's not always who I am, but it's rather who I position myself to be.
How did you get out of that?
I was on a trip, on a retreat with some other entrepreneurs. This was back in 2016. And we all agreed to no judgment.
Okay.
Now, I took that very seriously. I said, you know what? I'm not going to try to impress anyone. I'm not going to try to be someone who I'm not. I'm just going to be me because no one's judging me. So let me just be me. And I felt this huge weight, Danielle, lifted off my shoulders. And I had
Wow.
an amazing time. And I just want to
Freedom.
share what, yeah, I felt liberated. The word I actually used, which is very close to what you said, is liberated. And I just want to share one story from this trip. We were at a restaurant, and it's a restaurant where they have lots of entertainment while you're having your dinner. So they've got singing, dancing, acrobats, uh, magic, things like that, right? So they have acts while you dine. And we were sitting right next to the stage. So they have all these acts, and there's a nice ambiance. Everyone's cheering, laughing. Now, the final act, these dancers go up on stage. And I told you, we're right next to it. So one of the dancers looks at me and says, "Hey, come up." Now, I love to
Interesting.
dance. I just want to say that right off the bat. I love to dance. I love dancing. What happened in that scenario, I, the previous me, the one who had the fear of judgment, right, which is linked to people pleasing,
Yeah.
they're very closely interlinked, would have made up all these excuses um, not to go, right? Like look the other way, pretend I'm on my phone or something like that. But I said, hey, you know what? I just want to be me. And I went up and I had the time of my life. I loved it. And at the end, this lady, she puts her arms around my neck and she flings her feet up. So I have to catch her. Luckily for me, I caught her. But I was thinking about that and I said, she had no fear. She trusted me more than I trusted myself. And the realization for me was while I was being myself, I just felt so free. I felt so amazing. And all the people that I was meeting, random people on this trip, we had such wonderful conversations as well because they got to experience who I really am. And I believe that each and every one of us is an amazing human being. So why try to be someone else? I'm sure you've heard this. Why be the second rate version of someone else when you can be the best version of yourself? So
Yeah.
as I'm coming back home, I asked the air hostess to give me a pen and paper because I want to write some of these things down so I can share it with my wife. And while I'm writing, tears start rolling down my cheeks. And they don't stop. Like I'm just in tears for like half an hour. I don't even know how long it was, but it was a long time. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on? Like, you don't cry, but I didn't stop the emotions. I let the emotions flow. And I started processing and asking my questions. And I realized this is who I am, who I was for the last 5 days. What is this man that I'm going back to? Because that's not me.
Wow.
And that was kind of the realization and the first step in saying, I realized that I'm carrying a lot of excess baggage with me, which I term as clutter, because I'm trying to please people all the time. And because of this fear of judgment, now I'm going to change the order of priority. Before I used to prioritize sometimes my wife and then other people like the kids or the parents might not be happy. If I prioritize my parents, maybe the wife and the kids don't get happy. If I prioritize the kids, the other, in people pleasing, which I was doing and I was kept mixing it around, I kept making some people upset. So
I'm sure.
it's actually a lose-lose battle in my case. So what I did was I said, let me please me. Let me focus on myself. And again, we come back to this word selfish, but I want to share this perspective. I'm When I become a better version of myself and the true me, which I believe each and every person on this planet is a beautiful soul, that whoever interacts with me is going to experience that magic and I'll get to experience their magic, and we can create this beautiful bond together. So by being the best version of me, I'm a better father, I'm a better son, a better husband, a better boss, a better friend, a better this, a better that. It's just the list just keeps on going on and on and on. So by being a better version of me, I'm actually serving everyone in a much better way than I was before.
This takes courage, Sal. It's a big change in one's life when they decide to drop off their masks, right? It's like just be me is really a big decision. Think about it. Like you're always upsetting someone. If you stay late at the office, you're pleasing your boss and you're making your wife upset. This is reality. But what pleases you that moment is like you decide, is it worth it to stay this finish this task today? Will it help me as a person to prove my thing? Or just like, yeah, I'm not going to accomplish much because I'm so tired today and no, let's please my wife tonight and let the boss meet me tomorrow. Something like that. But you give yourself a priority of like let my let's say N self talk now. Let's hear myself talk. It's amazing.
Absolutely, what you said is so spot on. It's it's rarely a situation where you please everyone. You might have pleased someone, but you may have upset someone else. But here's the thing, and I go back to what I said earlier. You sleep with yourself every single night. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, am I at peace with my decision? Because
Nice.
if you know that most, not every, but most decisions you make, someone will get upset, you can't win it all. You can't win them
Sometimes.
all. So then you
Yeah,
might as well make
exactly.
sure that you please yourself, because you're going to bed with yourself every single night. And if you're at peace with your decision, it doesn't matter what someone else thinks, because they will always have an opinion, even the ones who are close to you.
True, true. Thank you very much, Muhammad Shukri. Muhammad Shukri was my guest, and I'm honored to have him on board. He's very professional, and he's really someone who has an impact to the world, just like you, Sahel. So thank you very much, Muhammad, for joining us today. Okay,
It's a
going
pleasure,
back.
it's a pleasure to have him here. I want to share one story, Danielle, that I just thought of.
Nice. Sure.
Um, and this is something that maybe people can relate to. There's so many people, especially when you live in a big city, there's dinners, there's events, there's celebrations that are going on. And there's sometimes some moments where almost every night something is happening.
Hmm.
And you say, oh, but if I say no, the host or my friend will get upset, right? They might get upset. So you end up going, but you're tired. And then you're not yourself. And then they're probably saying, oh, Sahil came, but something was off. And even if you weren't off, even if you were fully on, you might be off the next day with your family or at your work. So whatever decision you end up making, to your point, a decision I made for tonight may affect how I am tomorrow with the people that I'm interacting with. And so you have to ask yourself, what is more important for you? Because once you have clarity on what is more important for you, because in reality, Danielle, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And by
Hmm.
having clarity, at least whenever you say yes or no, you're doing it in line with what brings you peace.
Hmm.
And when it brings you peace, you're not trying to please anyone, you're just pleasing yourself, which means the best version of you is coming out. And again, no matter what your role is, you're going to be a much better individual to be around, better energy. And when you have better energy, you have better productivity. So I always tell people, especially those who are suffering with time management, and they're like, oh, I don't have enough time in the day. When you make the right decisions, you're able to do more in less time because you're coming with great energy. You're not having all these voices in your head saying, oh, I should have, I could have, but I didn't. Life just operates more smoothly that way.
True. Okay. So we don't have one single word to say good or bad of people pleasing, but at least let's have this thought. Can we use people pleasing as an opportunity for self reflection and personal growth?
For self reflection and personal growth, absolutely. Because every time you do something, you can check in with yourself. How does that make me feel?
Hmm.
Because sometimes you don't know. You might not even know that it's upsetting you because it might be something subconscious. Maybe it's something from your early childhood, and you just haven't, dealt with that trigger yet. So if you said yes or no to anything, you can ask yourself afterwards, how is that making me feel? And if you're feeling good, wonderful. If you feel nothing, it's okay, doesn't really matter. But if you're feeling bad, like if it's causing you pain, you might ask yourself, wait a second, I keep doing this again and again, but it's causing me pain.
Hmm.
I need to do something about it.
Hmm. True.
You can then go
True.
into detail what is causing the pain and then you can resolve it. So that's what I mean. So absolutely you can use it for self-development.
Interesting question. Raisa Ali is one of my continuous supporting. Thank you very much for being with us. Sorry, it doesn't show the name as always. I don't know, but she has a comment. She said, "But I think one is to be sure about real internal peace, and another potential fake internal peace. For example, you are to be sure you are not selfish." Interesting.
Yeah, it's a very deep, it's a very deep question, a very deep comment, I would say. And thank you for
Right.
sharing. To this,
So,
I sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So go ahead.
To this, I would say you're absolutely right. It is very important to really sit with yourself. I'll give you an example. I use time in the evenings to reflect on my day. And I use times in the morning to meditate and just so I'm with myself in the morning for a certain amount of time, which is a decent amount of time, at least an hour. And in the evenings, I kind of give myself a good 10 minutes just to reflect on the day. So I'm not really cutting into time with the family. And I ask myself, with the decision that I made, was it really the right decision? Because sometimes you make it with impulse, you make it quickly, you think it was right, but maybe in the evening, as you reflect on it, you go, actually, you know what? That was not the right decision.
Hmm. And you
Or
learn
vice
from it.
versa. Or you might have said, you know what? Yes, it was the right decision. So if you give yourself time to yourself to have a conversation with the self and either validate or otherwise the decision that you made, it enables you to grow. But if you're just always on the run and you don't have enough time for yourself, you may never get that answer. So thank you very much for raising this point. My personal experience and what I've seen with many of my executive clients is they spend time reflecting. And with that time, they're able to realize whether that did give them the inner peace they were looking for, or it was, as you say, a fake internal peace.
Hmm. What about personal growth?
So all this leads to personal growth, Danielle. Each time you are reflecting on your actions and how that makes you feel. And I say how that makes you feel, I say evenings and mornings when you're more in a peaceful place. If you're in a heavily
Yeah.
stimulated environment, you may get distracted and not think straight. But all these things allow you to then either realize what you did was right for you, and I say for you because right for you could be wrong for someone else. Everyone has their own
Mhm.
opinion, but you realize whether it was right for you, and then you're like, okay, let me do more of it. Or you realize it was wrong for you, and then you say, hey, I need to adapt or change because that didn't work for me. I'll give you an example. So every evening, I told you I spend time reflecting. I ask myself two questions: what raised my energy levels today?
Mm.
And that just gives me a great idea of the things that went well, and I note it down. And I also ask myself, what drained my energy levels today?
Mm.
And I note that down. And then I will look at it at the end of the week or at the end of the month. And if I see things repeating, because some things could be one off, but if I see things repeating, like I see things raise my energy levels, I'm like, oh wow, how do I do more of that? Because that's really working out for me. And if I see things
Mhm.
repeating that are draining my energy levels, I ask myself, clearly this is something that is impacting me in a negative way that I have not addressed. So let me now figure out how to address it and take it head on so that I can evolve and become a better version of myself.
Beautiful. Okay, I have one last question because we have less than 4 minutes. And
Mhm.
before I just leave the bike with you, I don't know how the 60 minutes just run like that. Okay, living authentically. I know most of us here, just like our some of us here, engineers, want something practice, want something steps clear. So, what practical steps can we take to live more authentic, fulfilling life?
One great step is, it's a very basic one, is carry a little notebook with you. And I say a little notebook because maybe your phone might be a distraction, unless if you're very disciplined. Every time you say something that you did not want to say, note it down. And if you can't do it on the spot, do that exercise I told you in the evening. What did I do that I did not want to do but did anyway?
Hmm.
Right?
Interesting.
What did I do that I did not want to do but did anyway? And then ask yourself, what is the reason behind it?
Hmm.
Because if you don't pause and reflect, you will never grow because you just keep walking, walking, or running, depending on how fast you're moving in life. But if you pause and reflect, you will always start to get answers. And when you start asking yourself those questions, that's the start of a beautiful journey to become a better version of yourself.
I have to stop you here because I want to have one comment. Thank you very much, Rafiq. Even if you join later, we'd love to have you, and you can watch the replay as well. We have less than 2 minutes to conclude and give the people the golden nuggets for this session, and then I will close up. So the mic is with you. What would you like to address in less than a minute?
People pleasing is wonderful as long as the person you're pleasing is yourself.
That's beautiful.
Right?
That's
Uh,
beautiful.
of course, people pleasing is wonderful as long as it's not, and for others, it's fine as long as it's not causing you pain. So that's the final line.
Amazing. So thank you very much, our audience. Thank you very much, Sahel, for the amazing session we had. And I don't know, just like I said, the 60 minutes was went by very fast and very quick. So thank you. You have shared a very valuable insights on people pleasing. Your message is truly inspiring, and I'm sure the audience will find this incredibly helpful. Anytime you have a comment, I'm addressing this to the audience. Sahel will pay attention to your comments, your questions, and you can get connected with him on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to answer or put your comments and questions. Remember, it's okay to prioritize your needs and well being. By breaking free from the people pleasing, this trap, you can live more authentic and fulfilling life. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and remember, your happiness matters a lot. Thank you very much, Sahel, and thank you, everybody. Good night.